Hi, my name is Amanda. I'm a campus staff minister at the University of Miami, and today I'll be sharing with you on the lesson of King David. Learning about King David's life and his heart for worship has really brought me closer in my relationship with God. David is a worshiper through and through. He sought God's presence first and always reminds himself of who God is and what he had done for him. He praises him in all circumstances. When we surveyed David's life, it really is just a reminder and encouragement for me to go to God in whatever state I'm in and to keep my heart in a continual posture of worship. I found that in David's life, there's such a vulnerability about what he's going through, his hardships, and he really meets God in his lowest moments. And even in the worst of it, he gives God praise. What really stands out in David's worship is that he focuses on who God is. That even when he's in the pit, he reflects on God's character, and it encourages him. His approach to worship in that way has really transformed my personal times of prayer and worship with God. And sometimes that worship has to be in a place of faith. It's not based on how I'm feeling. A scripture that I think really speaks to how David approaches worship is how in Ephesians it talks about how we shouldn't be drunk on wine, which leads to debauchery, but to be filled with the Spirit, to sing spiritual songs, psalms, hymns, and spiritual songs, and to make music in our hearts to the Lord, always giving thanks to God. And I really believe that David has the key to live in that type of life, being filled in the Spirit with a heart that is filled with songs of celebration of God and who he is. And his worship was an access to God's heart. What I've learned is that as a staff, as a daughter of God, it's so imperative that I keep my heart in a continual posture of worship. I know that when I'm feeling down, when I have hardships, when I'm anxious, I have to look at myself and really see, am I going to God in that place of worship like David did? David knew how to be filled with the Spirit. It's really easy to do the work of ministry as a staff and feel like you're running on empty or get burnt out. And I know David had those moments too. But when we forget to worship, we're doing it on our own strength. And David would always run back to God. And it produces results that is so much better when we are doing it from a place of worship. We should be like David in that our pursuit should be God and his presence, first and foremost. David was a king, he had wealth and riches, and yet he knew what the greatest thing was. His treasure was the presence of God. Psalm 27 is my favorite from David, where it talks about how he's the one thing he desires, one thing he seeks, is that he may dwell in the house of the Lord all the days of his life, to gaze upon his beauty and inquire in his temple. David's life evokes us to live with our greatest affections and desires for God and his presence. This is so vital to whatever we're doing with God in our workplace, in the ministry, in the home. And my exhortation for you and myself is that we would seek God's presence first and that we would live with a heart of worship.